Attention, attention, shoppers. We're gonna be doing the survey now. So it would be really great if we could all reassemble here, and you should have it in your email box, in your inbox, and you can forward it to whoever you want. But ideally, you would do it now. It's it's easier. It's easier to print, but I don't. I mean, it's a lot of printing. But you can do it on your phone, and it should take you about 10 minutes to do it. If you're like 14 and higher, you could. I think you could do it. It would be interesting. Probably really young children, it doesn't make as much sense. But if you're 14 or higher and you want to do it, it's a good opportunity. Laura, I sent it to you. So let's go ahead and fill it out now, so that it'll make the Q&A time much more meaningful if you know where you're at and your spouse is at. So that's just my power. Is it actually plugged in?
It is.
It normally works pretty easily. Should it be set on that HDMI one? Is that the correct? It is. How are we doing? Getting there. Those of you, let me try plugging it in. Those of you who are on a laptop, it is really quick on a laptop because it copies the column scores over to the second page. Say again? Email to that address? All one word? Sattlerstage@gmail. Okay. 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 Could you move it to? Okay, we're gonna let's reassemble. I'm hoping you got most of it done. Could you keep going? Go to page 3, or actually page 4. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so this handout that I've sent to you all has several pages. Yeah, perfect, Gideon. Thank you. And so here are the 4 types here: sanguine, choleric, phlegmatic, melancholy, and they're color coded, which makes it a bit easier to remember. The basic desires, which Catherine had outlined. Before I bring her up, before I ask her to come up and sit at the stage here, and we do Q&A, I want you to do one last thing. Each parent, without looking at the others, rate or try to classify your children and see if you come up with the same one here. And so here we have again a pretty helpful classification system. So I would say if they're probably over 6, you have a shot at being able to do that, and then you can compare with your spouse on that. So see if you can do that. And then Gideon, if you could you advance to the next page? I just want everyone to see these before we start the Q&A. The next page has just keywords that help us to know what each of them are. I was telling Catherine that it's a little difficult sometimes to, at least for me, to phlegmatic, choleric, those are not the most intuitive words. Oh, what happened? Just back to where we were. Yeah. So here's some keywords here for sanguine up on the upper left, fun-loving, outgoing, life of the party, optimistic, choleric, born leader, get things done, visionary, decision maker, phlegmatic, relaxed, likable, peaceful, low stressed, melancholy, organized, detail oriented, accurate, deep thinker. And then could you go to the next page? The next page has the strengths and weaknesses, which I think are the same ones that are basically the same ones that would have been on that sheet, which you all now have in your email. So I'm not going to read all these, but you can see where they are, and you can see where you are on that and get a sense of how accurate it is. So I actually think this is very interesting. Catherine, would you come up and have a seat? And then Gideon, would you just go back up to two more? Your eyes aren't in the light, are they? Okay, good, perfect. Okay, great. I'm going to start asking questions because there's a bunch, and then I'll open it up for anybody who wants to ask questions here. So thank you so much for this session. Thank you for having me. Now it's on. Okay, I think it's on. Gideon, are we on? All right. So here we have the four basic types here, and so one of the things, and I'll just make a high level comment first, and I want to get your reaction. So there's a few of these personality classification systems. So Myers-Briggs is out there. That one has 16 possibilities because there's two for 4 different positions. Enneagram, which actually has some pagan origins there, but that has 9, and Enneia is the Greek word for 9. Yeah, so this is probably the simplest of all of them. And let me check if it's on. It's not on. There we go. Okay, so tell me why this system is the preferred one. Is it the simplicity? Is it?
It's the one that I learned first.
Okay.
That's all. And so it's the most familiar to me. I've been teaching on it for years. I was telling some folks that there's, like he said, there's the Briggs-Meyer. There's one where you said they use all P letters. Is that what you were saying?
Well, for this one, there's a way of it's actually here. So popular, powerful, perfect, peaceful.
Okay.
So it's a different way of kind of relabeling the 4.
And then
so
there's one that they use animals. There's lion, bear, eagle. I don't remember them all. They might even have some of the wrong animals. But my point is that there's more than one assessment for this basic concept.
Okay, so let's talk about parenting first, and then we'll do marriage. So this speaks to me because. Okay, so I'll say I scored very strongly in the choleric one.
Say it isn't so.
and so I get very frustrated when things don't happen, and people are just kind of rolling around and being very unproductive, just not really doing things and all that. And so I come as the kind of the drill sergeant. Let's get going. Let's do this. Come on. Let's go. And I get very frustrated. I do. And as my wife will attest, that leads to conflicts that we will have in the home. Would you say to me, but I'm sure there's others that are there where there's going to be a clash of styles, that it's better to just take your foot off the gas and just let the person. I'll give a very specific example. Getting up people in the morning to have things done at a certain time by a certain, like for me, it's just like really important and others that are more phlegmatic, and we have a couple that are more phlegmatic, are just so easygoing that it's frustrating to me. How should I respond to that?
Boy, I wish I was an expert. I'm just like, let me gather my thought here, because again, you're wired the way you're wired. So I think when I was talking to one of the couples here at the break, grace, we all need grace. We have grace from God. You have to recognize that your phlegmatic children are the way God made. Maybe just a gentler, ask the Lord for some wisdom of how you can gently persuade them to get up and do what they need to do. Because, I don't know if setting a timer and saying you've got until this timer goes off to get yourself dressed or your chore done, so that they've got a specific goal in mind and you still have the satisfaction of them accomplishing the goal, and then they've got the ability to do it, according to their own time. Because I would do that too, be like, get up, come on, get dressed. We've got to get out the door. And it just, you can do that till you're blue in the face. You've been a parent long enough. Sometimes you just have to experiment with different strategies to find what works. And then the other thing, Finney, is just recognize your own tendency and take your foot off the gas and just say, I've got 9 children and it's going to be impossible to get all of them to do exactly what I want them to do. So I've got to relax, be flexible, and possibly come up with some new tools.
Okay, that's good. And then what about, like you gave the example of your daughter who she's choleric, you said, and with the making of the omelets, and she was just very very proactive and doing things that you would not expect for someone that young to be doing.
Right. Very independent.
For parents, yeah, independent, that's a good word. So for parents who have, let's call them headstrong children that are kind of stubborn, let's say stubborn, it's a negative way, or maybe they want their way, they tend to be more argumentative. How as a parent, how did you navigate that coming from the more, you said sanguine, you were more on the sanguine.
I'm sanguine choleric.
Sanguine choleric.
Right.
Okay.
So my choleric daughter and I, you
You
know,
butt heads because you
right.
each have your own way that you want to go.
Exactly. And we both want to be in control. And I'm the
Okay.
parent.
Okay.
So I darn sure think that I should be in control. And trying to convince a choleric child that they can be in control of the things that I put them in charge of, but she can't be in control of the family. She can't be in control of her brothers. She doesn't get to tell them what to do and boss them around. And that's the tendency of a choleric, is they want to tell everybody what to do because
Okay.
they think they know.
Got it. So how did you then? You just would tell us how you that insight helped you parent her better.
Well, I just locked her in a room for 3 days. No, like I said, it helped me to relax and allow her to. I mean, essentially what I just said, the things that were age appropriate for her to be in charge of, I encouraged it. I tried to think of other things that she could be in charge of because it just made her feel so important, not prideful, but just, she's the youngest in the family, and the youngest, can always feel like, everybody else is, telling them what to do, or they lose all the games because we're all so competitive. So there's hard things about being the youngest in the family. So just allowing her to have a little bit of power, if that's the right word, but then not exceed her power. And that's the tightrope walk is, Jesse, it's not your job to tell Jordan what to do. Okay? So you don't get to do that. If you want to come talk to me because you think he needs to do something, then we can have a conversation, but you're not the boss.
Right. Because the challenge here is you want to be the parent. You're obviously you don't want things to just go hog wild, but at the same time you want to affirm the strengths that they have, these budding strengths. Right. And so in her case, being this more choleric type, you want to be affirming that that's a God-given, God-created aspect of her nature, but she has to learn how to submit that to you.
Right. And one of the things you said in your lecture where you were talking about the way you encourage a child, I thought that was brilliant. I wish I'd been able to do that with my own kids. I'm certainly going to try to incorporate that now because obviously, even though they're adults, I compliment them and my grandchildren. But it's the same thing. Jesse, I really appreciate the fact that you can plan a vacation that you and I can both enjoy, and it's not on me to do. I'm so happy that that's such a strength of yours because, if I did it, it would be a mess. We'd miss the bus or be late for the excursion. So just, again, affirming, in a positive way that makes her recognize that I see her strength.
Mm-hmm. All of these are also going to have an ugly side in the sense of anger, procrastination, things like that, where it's sin that's corrupting it to some degree. I think of children who have just sort of bad attitudes and kind of the snotty type. How do you use or not use this? Because you don't want to let this be a license for just people being bad attitude natured folks. So how do you use this and hold that intention with trying to correct?
Gosh, that's a hard question. It's a good question. Again, a lot of this stuff, you just go back to biblical principles, and maybe you don't have to concentrate so much on the temperaments as, I'm the authority in our home. The only thing that, you can control is your attitude. I expect you to have a good attitude. I expect you, and again, age appropriate stuff. You can't tell a 3-year-old that you expect them to have a good attitude, but you can tell a 3-year-old they can't throw a fit to get their way. So just trying to reinforce to the child, I guess, I don't know how else to say it. It's like, temperance, self-control. These are and what I would tell my children is my job was to work myself out of a job. that was my job. And that meant teaching them everything from how to balance a checkbook, although I've never balanced one in my life, so not a good example. But, Jay taught him how to teach, truly, thank God I married my math man. But, Jay taught them all how to change a tire. I taught him how to pick broccoli. We taught them how to live life. And part of that, as we know as Christians, is teaching them what God expects of them. And because God expects that of them, it's our job as parents to also expect that of them and then to help them do it through repeated behavior, because it's, we have to learn how to behave.
Mm-hmm.
I will say too, there are children. You who have more than one child. You've got your compliant ones that you don't have to write them, and you've got your self-motivated ones. So the challenge to me, as also even with 3, all my kids were different, right? They all are. So then you've got more to navigate, because when I was growing up, everything had to be fair. You can't treat every child the same. You just can't. And so, like I said when I was talking, I learned to discipline my children differently in ways that would be effective for their temperament. If I had disciplined them all the same, it would not have been effective. So and that becomes a challenge, because then, little Peter says, well, that's not fair.
Mm-hmm.
Johnny got to do blah, blah, blah. To which my reply is always, guess what? Life's not fair. Tell me 3 things. Name 3 things that are fair. And they can't do it. So end of discussion.
That's good. I have a couple more and then I'll open it up. So one of my take homes from hearing this talk afresh after 3 years is, as mine have grown older, and as I have several teenagers now, I've noticed, I think there's choleric on choleric tension that is there as there's butting heads. But then there's also, as I've been reflecting on this, there's also a way that you can look down on someone who is completely different from you and has a different set of temperaments, different temperament and different set of gifts and strengths and weaknesses. It's been said that, it's been a great observation that, I don't even know who made this, that a lot of the denominational splits that have happened over the years, they're more actually divisions on giftings than they are theological. So like, for example, a lot of people that are kind of classically more reformed tend to be more heady, intellectual. That would be more in the melancholy. Charismatic would be more the sanguine, kind of fireworks and excitement there. This would be the more ecumenical, let's all get along, type. And so, people will unnecessarily say, you have a different gifting from me, so you need to go over there.
Right.
But of course, Paul's injunction in 1 Corinthians 12 is, despite the different giftings, stay together and work together and don't look down on one another, right? Why would the eye say to the foot, I have no need of you, et cetera, et cetera. So could you speak to, I'll generalize it now even to marriage, but parenting or marriage, how does one not look down on and despise somebody who's very different from you on this? The violence makes sense, or not violence, too strong. The collisions make sense.
Right.
When you have like people who are especially two cholerics, I can see why that would be a recipe for fireworks.
And one of the things I said at the break to this couple here was that if you get 2 cholerics together, they will butt heads.
Mm-hmm.
If you get 2 sanguines together, they'll have a party. If you get 2 melancholies together, they'll cry a tear in their beer together. And if you get 2 phlegmatics together, they'll just sit on the sofa and not talk. I'm serious. I mean, that's just, it's really a nutshell version way of understanding, because it's pretty true. And if you've got choleric children, they're the ones that butt heads. If you've got 2 that play really well together, they're probably both sanguine, or one's a sanguine phlegmatic. To answer your question, how do you not look down? It's by reinforcing, and this is what I've had to reinforce in myself with Jay, is he is exactly the way God made him to be. He's exactly the way God made him to be. And instead of letting it frustrate me, I can find the things about it that benefit me, that I appreciate, that I admire, and then tell him, build him up. So, and the same thing with your children. Point to the positive. I know you're in conflict with, Joey right now, but can you tell me something about Joey that really you love having him as a brother? And reframe it so that it's not going to mitigate the frustration. It's okay to be frustrated. It's not okay to punch him in the nose because you're frustrated. But I did that once to Jay and it didn't work. No, I'm kidding. But you know what I'm saying. So if you can acknowledge the feeling and the emotion and because that's important. I think one of the things that we tell, especially little boys, is, don't cry. Boys don't cry. And hopefully that's something that is more archaic than, that now. But so acknowledge it, deal with it, and then reframe it. And that can be a positive thing because you want to leave it on the positive. Even if you're disciplining or correcting a child, you want to somehow try to leave it on a positive note. And that can be hard because discipline in and of itself is usually negative to that child. They don't like it.
That's good. I want to see what questions anyone has in the audience. And yeah, Alyssa, yeah.
I needed affirmation that it was okay to be me, that my person, and I had, again, one of my marriage counselors, our marriage counselors, she told me, she just affirmed me. Catherine, you're so much fun. You're so funny. You're this, that, and the other. It's such a shame that your parents couldn't recognize that and nurture it in you. So, they did the best they could. My dad was an only child. He did not have the tools in his tool belt. He was not raised in church. He was not a Christian. He did not go to church with us. He didn't have anybody he could go to for counsel. He was a dentist, so he worked in the medical world. So that's why they sent me to the psychiatrist. And I'm not saying that was a wrong thing. I'm just saying if he'd have been able to go to church and talk to a pastor or an elder or an older brother in the Lord who also had a rebellious child, maybe bless his heart, I was a difficult child. I was. And then as I started getting in my teenage years and got really, really rebellious and started doing drugs and brought all this chaos into the family system, it just escalated. But it was born out of that. It was born out of this fury that I felt so like nobody understood me. Nobody acted like it was okay for Catherine to be Catherine. Nobody enjoyed me. I was always being told to be quiet, sit down, calm down, quit doing this, quit being disruptive. It's just all. I just always felt like I couldn't do anything right. I couldn't do anything right. Okay, two questions, or three. What's your temperament? Okay. Okay, so your dominant is melancholy, your blend is choleric. How old is your daughter? Oh, it's your son. Okay, and you think at 3 he's choleric? Okay, well, he probably is. If you think so at 3, no,
Yeah, that was
right?
the example you gave,
Right,
Yeah.
right, yeah, for sure. Right. And the challenge then as the parent is to channel that, to affirm it. What does the Bible say? It says not to crush their spirit. We don't want to crush and that was to answer your question. That's what happened to me. My spirit was crushed. It was crushed constantly. So you don't want to crush his spirit. You still have to get him to behave, to not backtalk you, to, follow the rules of the family. And you're doing this. You're just guiding him down the pathway to adulthood.
Said you had 3 questions for her?
I asked them how old was her son and what was her temperament and whatever.
Natasha.
Yeah, sure. Right. Jesus. Seriously. I got born again when I was 15. I was actually hitchhiking on my way to Florida. I was going to pick fruit with the migrant workers because that's what white upper middle class girls do. I did say I did drugs, right? And I got picked up by this preacher, and he shared the gospel with me. And I got out of the car, and I got up on the highway, and I stuck my tongue out, my tongue. I stuck my thumb out, and I prayed my first prayer where I wasn't furious with God, and I said, if you're like that man says you are, I hope I get caught tonight. Well, I did. I got caught. I got arrested. I got put in a juvenile detention center. I wouldn't cooperate in any way, wouldn't tell them my name, nothing. I was very belligerent. I hope you find that hard to believe. And, but there was a Bible in my cell. And anyway, I won't tell the whole story. I got down on that cold tile floor and I cried out to God and I begged him to come into my life and take this mess that I'd made in 15 years and do something with it. I didn't know what the word, I'd never heard the word repentance, but that's what I did. And God flat showed up. And I got born again in that cell, and Aunt and Uncle came and rescued me and took me to Delaware to live with them. But this is a long way to. So it didn't happen instantly. I got instantly born again. But what does the scripture say? We work out our salvation with fear and trembling. But I had gone to a conference, and the man who was teaching the conference said something about the washing of the water of the word. And that conference was a week long, and that's all I remember. The washing of the water of the word. And that was such a visual that it's like I just pictured myself standing under Niagara Falls and the word washing over me. And I started reading the Bible in a different way. And the Bible told me things nobody had ever told me. That I was the apple of God's eye. That I was the head and not the tail. That I was the righteousness of God in Christ Jesus. And that it's like, again, the scripture says, we're renewed by the transforming of our mind. And the scripture, the living, breathing word of God began to transform my mind. And so I began to look at myself in a completely different way. Like anybody. I mean, I'm 67 years old. I know I don't look a day over 66, but I still struggle. I mean, that negative self-talk, I can go down that downward spiral really quick, but I've learned to stick my finger in the spokes and stop the wheel and tell myself the truth. If I have to look myself in the mirror, if I have to write it down, if I have to go out and jog and say it to the cadence of the movement of my feet, I tell myself the truth because it's the truth that sets us free.
Paul.
Yeah, so what is the best way, to figure out our children? Is it better to go through that with our children and ask them?
It depends on their age. If they can, and you might want to sit down and do it with them and just discuss it. Samuel, when you look at yourself, when you see yourself, and just go down the checklist. Certainly do it with your spouse. And by the way, Vinny, I thought it's so good that you're doing this and really reinforcing the teaching. Because usually at homeschool conventions, I give my talk and I leave and I go to my book table and try to sell my books. So there's none of this, let's talk it out together, figure it out together. The Q&As may be 5 minutes. So I think this is really, really helpful. I hope you all find it helpful too. But to answer your question, I would go through it with your children. And for your spouse, do it for your spouse and show them how you check-marked them. You'll be very surprised because we don't see ourselves the way our spouses see us. When I filled out Jay's, it's like, no, I'm not. But to me he is. And then he sort of had to go, you know what? You're right, because I do X, Y, Z. So it's a wonderful exercise. And then you and your spouse go through with your children. You'll have to do it 9 times. But go through and then have them do it, especially your older ones. Because if they can get understanding, what did I say in my, in your wisdom, get understanding. Well, if your children can have some understanding about their own temperament, then it's going to help them mitigate and find their place in the family and offer what they can offer, and then also realize, hopefully, where they need some balance or they need some, like I said, some improvement. And in a healthy family system, again, like you were saying in your lecture, if if the criticism or the instruction maybe is a better word, if we can learn from that, and even if your children can, help each other, then they don't have to resent it or have a fight over it or cry or whatever. But that takes time and practice, because we don't do that innately. I don't think most people, are very sensitive to criticism. I know I am.
Josiah. How old did you say she was? Six? Six. Okay. Each temperament has its difficulties. I told you the melancholies can be difficult because it's just really hard to get a child to not be hard on themselves, excuse me, when they're perfectionistic, or getting the sanguine to settle down and pay attention, or the phlegmatic to get motivated. But the cholerics, again, especially if you have that, then there's the conflict. But I think, since you asked me, it is that you have to do what I had to do with Jessie and say, what's her name? Aveline. Oh, that's beautiful. Aveline, you have a beautiful name, but you're not the boss. This is mom and dad's decision to figure out, would you please go in the other room and, color, distract, send her, because she's not an adult, no matter how much she wants to be or thinks she is. So that is an unhealthy dynamic, to have a 6-year-old try to insert herself into your marriage, into your decision-making process. And so if you have to remove her, if you have to talk about it later, you don't have to figure everything out right now always. And sometimes you do, but you don't always. So you can just say, honey, we're going to table this discussion until after she goes to bed. So there's different ways to handle it, but the overarching thing is she has to know you're the boss, she's not. And she doesn't get to be, ever. She doesn't ever get to be the boss of the family. Jessie, when you have a family, you can be the boss. For now, it's me. I think we have time for maybe one or two more questions.
Is this helpful? Is this helping at all? Or am I just talking? Which is fine with me. Be better if I was helping.
This is very, very helpful. I'll ask a question since I don't see any more hands. So with Jay, you mentioned that he didn't want to be labeled or put into a box, and then you kind of had a quip, which I don't know if you actually said to him or if you were just joking, but
probably I did.
How does that work in terms of people not wanting? Because you hear that a lot. I don't want to be put in a box. I don't want to be put in a box. How do you use the system well where it's not too confining?
Well, to me, again, it goes back. I just feel like I'm repeating myself. It goes back to understanding, and so when I learned about the love languages, that gave me understanding. Jay's love language is time spent. I mean, I'm sanguine choleric. I'm on the move. So my books are all signed. You want to know why? Because Jay wants me on the sofa next to him while he's watching TV at night, and I would blow my brains out if I wasn't doing something. So it's like it works for him. I'm next to him, but I'm getting something accomplished. He wants me to come out and talk to him while he's changing oil in the car. It's like, no, thank you. No, thanks, but I'll talk to you in 30 minutes when you come back in the house, honey. But what was the question?
Well, just resisting labels.
But so to me, it's understanding. Another thing, I was talking to Swayze's, thank you. I knew it was an actor's name. The Swayze's last night is one of the great books I read was called The Four Tendencies. And in a Reader's Digest version, it's what motivates you. Are you internally motivated? Are you externally motivated? Or are you both or neither? And this would be helpful with your children as well, all of your children. So if they're internally motivated, then you can just put the assignment in front of them and they'll do it. If they're externally motivated, they might need you, standing over them and watching them and encouraging them or whatever. If they're both, that's Jay's both. Jay's internally and externally motivated. So that's one of the reasons why he's so compliant, is that it's like he's telling himself what he's supposed to do and society's telling him what he's supposed to do. Like, don't speed. Okay, so he's a rule follower because he's compliant. Me, of course, because everything about Jay and I is opposite, is I'm what's labeled the rebel. And again, at dinner last night, I was telling Gretchen Rubin is the author of the book, and she's got a little phrase before you get into each one of the tendencies. And for the rebel, it's, you can't make me and I can't make me either. And I was listening to that book on tape. I nearly drove off the road because it's like, at like 60 some odd years old, my whole life made sense. I mean, that was an epiphany for me that was every bit as powerful as the temperaments, because I've never understood, why am I so resistant to authority? Don't tell me what to do. And part of it maybe is the sanguine. I'm not internally motivated. I say that. I mean, I jog 5 miles a day. So there's that, but I'm just saying, anyway, without belaboring it, it's an excellent book. It's just more insight. So back to your question. For me, every time I can get a little tidbit that makes me make sense to me, that makes the people in my life make sense to me, it's beneficial. It's helpful. And so I hope that they find it helpful too. The question is, what do you mean be put in a box? I mean, you're a man. That's the man box. You're a human. You're in the human box. Or whatever. You're an engineer. You're in the engineer box.
So,
yeah.
It seems to me it's like more about trying to understand the other box rather than.
Right.
That's a good way.
Right. And again, one quick example that I told them at the break is one of our 5,000 marriage counselors had us do this. And so my sanguine was huge. My choleric was next. I had a little bit of melancholy. I had a sliver of phlegmatic because I answered a couple of the questions like a phlegmatic would. So on that bar graph, I had 4 bars, just differing heights. Jay had 3. He had 0 sanguine. He didn't answer one question like a sanguine would. And our counselor wisely said to him, Jay, do you see why God gave you Catherine as a wife? Because she is over and above what you have none of. You need her. I always say if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have any money. If it wasn't for me, he wouldn't have any fun.
All right, let's end with this. So you all probably saw her, Catherine's book table out there, and maybe in our last couple of minutes, you could tell us about your books, how they can get your books. Anything there would be great.
Okay, so I put the books of the Bible to rhyme. I've got 10 of them in the series. There will only be 10 in the series. I've got curriculum that goes with them. I brought one set because I flew instead of driving, and I'm going to gift that to Finney and his family. I do have order forms, and I will cover the shipping. And then if you order some, I will give you the link for the curriculum. So I've got word games. My goal was for parents to use this as family devotions or Bible curriculum. And so I wanted tools for each book that would reinforce what that book is teaching. I started out with the first 3 I wrote were Genesis, Matthew, and Exodus. I was praying about which one to write next. I was studying our Hebraic roots. I know that Jewish children are required to memorize the Pentateuch. So for some reason, I just wrote those 5 books down, and the Holy Spirit said, Catherine, there's a New Testament counterpart to each one of those. I'm like, well, do tell. So the reason I have them set up the way they're set up, people always, all the melancholies are like, those are out of order. They're in my order. So Genesis and Matthew are books of beginnings. Exodus and Acts are books of going out. Leviticus and Hebrews are about the priesthood. Numbers and 1 Corinthians, which I haven't written, are about living your faith in the culture, and Deuteronomy and Romans are books of the law. Isn't that brilliant? God's really smart. And then I did Revelation, and I paired it with Daniel. You don't have to buy them in pairs because they're two of the prophecy books. And then I had people special requests that I write Esther and Jonah. So those are the 10 in the series. Please buy them.
She's got a bunch in her basement, so I'm sure she would appreciate that. All right, well, let's give a round of applause to Catherine Zoller.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's really a privilege. It really is. I appreciate this a lot.
We'll have a break until 4:30.
Thanks, Vinny.